Perfect. Guys, quickly moving on. We have the first session for the day, and that is from Shardul and Anshu. Shardul is the director of product for a couple of largest products by revenue at BrowserStack. And again, he has a very, very strong external perspective. He's been in this setup for a little close to a year, and I think he will be able to share some very, very interesting perspective, both internal and external over here. Great. Shardul, welcome. I'm just going to make you host in a minute. And same for Anshu. Very strong background in fintech. Been here for a little over a year and should be able to give you a very, very strong perspective of how the PM work really gets done at BrowserStack. Cool. Let me just quickly get started over here. Right. So we did conduct some polls, and we do have some results over here. But let me see if you guys can take this poll right now. And if you guys are in Slido, you'll be able to take this particular poll. Yeah, I think people have started voting in. Yeah, we have 7 votes, 9 votes. How many hours do you spend on calls each day? How many hours do you spend on call each day? 4 to 8 hours. I think that's the happy answer, it seems. Okay, 17 votes, 22 votes. 4 to 8 hours. 50% of the people are saying 4 to 8 hours. Okay, the 2 to 4 seem to be gaining traction. Okay, 24 votes. Can we have 6 more votes, please? Can we have 6 more votes, and we can close this particular thing, and then we'll hand it over to Shardul and Anshu so that they can take it over. Fantastic. No one has more than 8 hours of calls, is it? Wow. So the 2 to 4 is nudging ahead. Got it. 4 to 8 hours. 4 to 8 hours is the winner, unless someone really wants to make the 2 to 4 hours as the winner. Cool, guys. In the interest of time, quickly moving ahead and handing it over to Shardul and Anshu. Let me just quickly make you as the host.
Hey, thanks, Mayresh.
Awesome, thank you so much. Quickly moving ahead, Anshu, just to confirm, you're able to hear us. You're able to unmute yourself.
Yep, I'm good.
Perfect. So we have Shardul and we have Anshu. I think you've heard a lot about them. So let's get started. I think we have a series of questions already polled internally, and if you can just quickly share your perspective on this, and I think we'll keep this really time bound and quickly toss these questions between both of you. So the question number 1 is, what is the product manager role at BrowserStack like? I'll just quickly invite Shardul for you to go in first over here and share your perspective, please.
Sure. Hey, thanks, Mayresh. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on a weekend. We really hope the next 1 hour, this is something you guys enjoy listening from us, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you as well. Quickly, I mean, so the BrowserStack role at product manager role at BrowserStack. If you think about the product management, or whenever the life cycle of the product, right? When we are building a new product or delivering any incremental feature into product, it goes through 4 high-level phases, right? One is, of course, the road mapping exercise. Then there is a build or execution stage. Then there's an actual release and launch, right? And after that, you do the analyzing and then you make a decisions, right? Whether to iterate and what. So if you think about product manager role, and PMs at BrowserStack also plays different roles at these different stages, right? Basically, in a road mapping stage, they talk to the customers, They talk to the customers, users very, very regularly, and not only the external stakeholder, but also internal stakeholders, right? They collaborate very closely with customer engineering, customer success, account management, sales team, in order to try to get in front of the potential customers, users to get the insights, right? What problems they're facing. Other than that, of course, there's a deep industry understanding also come into the play, specifically around we operate into the testing domain. So deep understanding of the test automation, DevOps lifecycle, some of the understanding and know-hows of how the modern applications, web or mobile applications are built into the cross-functional team. That also plays a very important role. And this insight helps them build up their own point of view around the problems that customer might be facing. And then usually the output of this stage is to generate the what to build, what problems to solve, what problems, and then in what priority they need to be solved, right? So after the road mapping is done, in build and execution phase, usually it starts with having a detailed task briefs written. After some time, you will actually hear more about how that whole task briefing process goes. But essentially, in this task brief, other than what problem we are solving, why we are solving, which customers are going to get impacted, it also covers what are the metrics we are trying to measure, right? How the success looks like. What are the different potential way or direction these metrics can be achieved, and how they will exactly help customer, right? So that's what the PMs focus into the stage. They also work very closely with engineering in this stage because they get a very at least high level understanding of how the problems are being solved, right? At the high level design or architectural decision that goes into solving and addressing those specific problems. And of course, in this stage, the lot of BrowserStack product get experienced by the customers through documentation. So how the product documentation that needs to be released around its features and fixes, right? So that's also a very key part of the product manager role. Then in a release or launching stage, the important aspect comes to what are the different cross-functional team to keep in loop, legal, finances, support, PMs collaborate with those teams along with the product marketing and product program management teams in order to push the releases or launches. And once that is done, in a final stage of analyzing the results, once you put a feature out there, you analyze the result, right? Experimentation. Do you need a more? Then making a decision on, do we need more instrumentation done? Do we have enough data that is coming in to understand the impact of this particular feature or product that is driving for customers? Get the right monitoring dashboards in place that could allow you PMs or engineering team or other teams to look at them, right? And then finally, hey, what is working, right? What is going up, what is going down, and what to do next. Those are the essentially, I would say, how the role at the product manager at BrowserStack does. Anshu, you want to add something, please? Yeah.
I think you covered most of the part, but I think our focus at BrowserStack has always been to build scalable platforms to support business needs, right? Like, I think on a day-to-day basis, we work with our internal growth, marketing, and sales teams for them to deliver the right messages to the consumer, right? Spreading the awareness of CBD practices via the guides, blogs, making sure our website is robust, helping the sales reps on the floor with faster turnarounds for quotes. These might seem trivial at the forefront of it, but underneath, you need to make sure as a platform team that all these pieces are well in sync. So you're working like a well-oiled machine delivering results. And that is, I think, a key area of focus for all PMs across BrowserStack.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think perspectives from two very different people. Great. How is the PM role at BrowserStack different from the other organizations? So again, both of you have such a rich experience over here. So Shardul, you want to go in first over here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the bigger aspect of difference that I notice, at least in BrowserStack, on the product that I usually manage, our target customer persona is the developers. And then see, essentially at the BrowserStack, our mission is to help developers, developers or engineering teams to build amazing experience for their users, right? And that's why our target persona become developers, engineers, QAs, etc. Now there are some unique aspect of development. The developers is your target persona, right? Some of the aspect that we noticed that, see, a lot of these developers experience product additionally through APIs, the command lines, the product documentation. That's how they experience your product, right? They care a lot about ease of integration, but they also need a flexibility and configurability at the same time. And more than that, they need a very strong predictability around how your solutions are built. They need you to be open. When you put something out there, they need to have they need to see that transparently how this is done. They need the ability to extensibility also, because no matter how much use cases you try to cover, there is always developer wants to extend those and build their own specific way of using your product or solving the specific problem that he was trying to do, right? So they need that open and extensibility. They care a lot about. At the same time, developers, we also notice they're willing to try your features, right? They're willing to give you the early feedback. They demands visibility or roadmap, because even though you don't have something, they need to know when it's coming, right? So that's another empathy you would get from your customer. They are being developer. They also understand how the bugs and how the features get developed, but then demand that visibility. At the same time, they put a very, very big premium onto the performance and stability. It is something they can understand, and then they can demand you. Just like other normal consumer, you have either it's down or it's up, right? With the developers, it's not only about that. Is it performing consistently? It is stable enough. So that brings a very unique aspect how you think about your customer and how you build and solve problem for them. At the same time, as a PM, you're a lot of time you're looking at the open-ended problems. They're around, like I said, because your customers care a lot about performance, stability, uptime, security, and then of course the compliances, because you are actually integrating with working a lot of the enterprise customers and getting their applications tested through your platform. So the challenges that and as a publicly cloud infrastructure company, the challenges you face on there are a lot more open-ended. You got to work very, very closely with engineering teams on solving these hard problems. And then sometimes, and a lot of time, when you walk into this problem, the feasibility is also unknown. So that's another way your engineering team plays a very, very important role to understand, okay, these problems can be even solved in the short term. Another unique aspect of the PM role at BrowserStack, what I noticed, see, it's very common to use data to make a decision, right? But what I notice, we at BrowserStack, you look at the data and insights to even identify the problem areas, because those are also unknown sometimes. So you go deeper into the data to identify the set of customers who might be facing those problems, and then what could be the potential way of solving those problems, right? And those are what becomes a candidate for your roadmap as well. So these are the unique aspects that I noticed. Anshu, please go ahead if you want to add something. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, for me, I think I came from a fintech organization. My experience has been in fintech before BrowserStack, and there one of my biggest issues was, the consumer was just not aware about financial numbers. They did not have enough financial knowledge. Whereas at BrowserStack, your consumer is almost too sophisticated, right? They do understand the product really well. They are technically aware of everything. So here, the biggest problem that we need to convert to the customer, make them understand is the value metric. They need to quickly understand the value metric that we are providing to them before they move on to the next competitor. So I think that the time is a fairly crucial factor for us, right? From a consumer standpoint, which is very different from your regular B2C industries, right? For a B2B and more so for a DevTools market. And besides that, I think every company has core principles, but at BrowserStack, I think we really, that's sort of ingrained in the culture, like a couple of them, like, embrace constraints, less is more. There's always a situation where there's not enough time, not enough clarity. But I think within the PMs, we've sort of been ingrained in us that it's okay to take some calculated risks as long as you're not, sacrificing the customer experience, which really drives innovation and problem solving internally.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for your perspective on chiming in on this particular thing. Well, quickly moving ahead, I think this is a question that has also come in. What does a day in the life of BrowserStack PM looks like? Anshu, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So, BrowserStack has recently declared itself to be a remote first organization. I think we're one of the first companies who've sort of gone ahead and taken that stance. There's certain inherent challenges that come with being a remote first organization, and especially for a PM, where the crux of your success depends on connecting and collaborating with your teams, right? So I think we have developed certain practices within our culture where it's really helping us to connect with our teams more, even though we're not like in the same office, right? For example, we are really promoting 15-minute Zoom meetings, Slack huddles. Everyone's fairly disciplined with respect to maintaining their calendars or Slack statuses. So it's extremely easy to coordinate. So while we're not in the same office, and you would think that the speed would be compromised or the communication would be compromised, in my entire period, and I joined as remote, right, which was initially pretty daunting for me, but I don't think it has been like that, and I don't think we've sacrificed on the delivery of products that we have been able to ship in the last year or so, right? So I think that for me was that's how like really shaped the role of a PM at BrowserStack. Now, besides that, from a day-to-day, I think this health reports and metrics are like sort of the gold standard for me. We define L1, L2 metrics for every feature that we ship. I think until we sort of put those on Looker, we don't really consider a feature shipped. So, I think looking at those numbers on a daily basis, making sure they're in tune with company objectives, you have your daily hygiene meetings, stand-ups, collaborations with different stakeholders. I mean, I'm a part of the platform team, right? So for me, on a day-to-day basis, I collaborate a lot across growth teams, marketing, business, finance teams, sales teams. And in that sense, I feel like a PM role at BrowserStack is quite empowered, because while you are discussing these different strategies and there are requirements that come from every team, right? Every team feels that what they need should be put at a P0. But I think at a PM standpoint, it's extremely important for you to understand or get a full 360 view of the business, right? That's almost like a prerequisite for you if you're a PM at BrowserStack, to completely be in tune with the company objectives and the company OKRs. And that really empowers you when you have to finally make the prioritization between like X versus Y, or, when you're putting the features in line for your next sprint. So in that sense, I feel like the PMs at BrowserStack are fairly aware of what's happening across the organization and not in silos in like one team or another, right? And the final aspect, which is extremely important, is customer feedback, right? Like we focus a lot on customer feedback, like regular ticket analysis, getting customer feedback through Delighted. These are some of the tools that we use to make sure that we are constantly keeping a check on customer happiness and engagement.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Anshu and Shardul, both for the perspective. We have 20 questions, so we just want to make sure that we don't have 30 questions to answer at the end of the session. So let's quickly take a few questions. I have just pinned a few of them. Let's stay with the 60 seconds boundary when we respond to this particular thing. So question number one, how do you prototype at BrowserStack, given that you're a B2B company? And do you have customer advocates at key companies? Shardul, do you want to take that 60 seconds?
Yeah. So again, this depends on a lot of time, what kind of features we are building or what kind of improvements we are making. Yeah, but most of the time, a lot of our features go through the alpha, beta stages, and a lot of features that at least that we are looking at, there are already some customers waiting for them, right? So they automatically become a few customers. We will take the feature to them, get their input, even test with them, and once we have and then it goes from its own cycle of performance stability, and then it reaches the point where we think it's comfortable to it can be rolled out to the larger amount of customers, and then it gets to the general release. That's a very typically how we see the life cycle of the anything happening. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Next, I think we'll just take a quick question. What are the inputs to road mapping phase? And I'm sure we all do this, whether it is a quarter or a half yearly planning. So, what are the typical inputs that you consider as an input? Anshu, you want to take this one?
So basically inputs to the road mapping phase come from primarily like two core buckets. One of is obviously our product teams, which are basic in tune with the customer, constantly understanding what the customer needs, what are the market trends for DevOps. That's one. And the second thing is what comes from our internal teams, right? Keeping in mind our growth metrics at the rate which we want to grow. What do we want our visits to sign up conversion like? What do we want our website to look like? I think those are the two that primarily drive the road mapping for us for like, the quarter or the upcoming year.
Fantastic. Let me pin another question. And what are the technical and non-technical skills required to become a PM at BrowserStack? I'm sure we have a question similar to this to answer in time to come. So why don't we just quickly get this thing answered? I think a little out of turn and keep moving. So Shardul, do you want to just quickly chime in over here, and then we can give it to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're probably going to address something similar, but if I can take a cue from that. See, okay, so if you essentially think about the PM roles, I would probably see first is if you're looking at BrowserStack, right? We operate in a I would say crossing of two industries, dev tools and SaaS, right? So one is, of course, getting a better understanding of dev tools as the ecosystem. Okay, that I would still put it as more of a technical and non-technical understanding. Now, when we talk about developer as an ecosystem, what I'm talking about, right? One is, of course, platform ecosystems. So there are platform products, cloud platform products. You must have heard about SaaS, PaaS, ISaaS, right? So there is a lot of reading around that. How are these products and solutions are built on them? What kind of companies are offering them? How the customers are actually using this product? I think getting a better understanding of that definitely helps. Then second aspect is the DevOps lifecycle and overall developer as an ecosystem. DevOps is an ecosystem, right? So there's a lot of happening into how I think Mark Anderson wrote this article around, I think 14 years back, software eating the world. And now it is almost coming to that conclusion, right? So how the software teams have started playing a very important roles into the traditional businesses has changing significantly. And now the software itself is changing, right? So, and specifically the DevOps is playing a very big role into that. And when we talk about DevOps, what are we talking about essentially? So there's a lot of configuration, continuous integration tools and ecosystem like Jenkins. So get a better understanding why your engineering teams are using them, at what places they're using them, what are the benefits they're getting from those integration, continuous integration tools. Then there's, of course, automation testing. There is a reason why the automation testing is actually growing, and more teams wants to, either a lot of them are already doing it, or either a lot of these teams are aspiring to actually increase their automation coverage, right? And then what kind of tools are a lot more popular into that? This is where the open source ecosystem understanding also come into the very big into the play, right? So this is where we're talking about Selenium, JMeter, Cucumber. These are the very popular tools. You might want to get your little bit hands-on, understand how they work, how you talk to one of your engineer that you're already working with, how this can be used, install, play with it a little bit. They're not that very complex. Apart from that, I think the monitoring and the alerting also plays a very bigger role, and specifically as a PM, because you as a PM also use that, plus a lot of other companies' decisions are also being done around their DevOps ecosystem or their overall software pipeline, looking at their own monitoring and logging and where they are facing the challenges, right? So getting a better understanding of that ecosystem is also very important. And then even experiencing those tools, if you can. This is where I'm talking about Nagios, New Relic, Splunk. These are very popular tools. Why your teams are using it, why other companies are using it, what's the benefit? I would recommend get the better understanding of that. Yeah, I think that's a little bit overall, I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Shardul. I think we'll take one last question before we move on to the pre-planned set of questions. And Anshu, if you can just quickly take this, how does a PM do competitor analysis, given that we have really unique set of products? And which company do you think is your biggest competitor? I think we can park that maybe, but I think the first part, how do you do competitor analysis, and how do you see the products?
So I think for us, it's a little bit of it's a plus point for us that we are a dev tools market. So we have lots of developers with us. Even most of our PMs have been developers before. So I think when we're looking at competitors and competitive analysis, I think obviously deep diving into the competitors, seeing what products they offer, and then trying it out and seeing how, or what are the different aspects of it that could be similar and different to ours, where all could be there be a line of improvement for us. I think that's one thing that would be very easy for us to do. Secondly, I think we focus a lot on review websites, or sort of what are the customers saying about us, not just within BrowserStack, but like, looking at maybe like a G2 or a trust radius and seeing what are they saying about us versus our competitors. I think that is somewhere where we get a lot of data around how do our customers really view us in comparison with our competitors.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Just looking at the time, we are running slightly behind. So we'll just get on with the questions that we have already received from the people who have participated. Again, what are the metrics owned, measured by PMs at BrowserStack? And I'm sure we are a very data-focused, data-driven organization. So Anshu, you want to just quickly, 90 seconds on this?
Yeah, so see, from a product-led growth standpoint, right, as we've said before, it is extremely important for us to have a frictionless sign-up journey and instant value metric realization, right? Like our consumers are developers who believe in a do-it-yourself model, right? So when they come on your website, or you somehow figure out a way for get them to visit to your website, the journey from visit to sign up is extremely crucial. And there are many factors that are responsible for that, right? It is, what do you offer in your free trial product? What is the pricing that you offer? What is the overall performance of the website during the free trial? I think and what is sort of the messaging that you give? I think these are some fairly important metrics that we track on a day-to-day basis to make sure that we are able to convince our customers to convert to BrowserStack. And I think a couple of metrics that we track there are like an LTV to CAC ratio, what is the aha moment, visits to signups to conversions. Also, like, developers are a very strong community, right? So a word of mouth plays a huge role in customer acquisition for us. So while having a superior quality product is a prerequisite, I think we look at virality coefficient. I think these metrics were were responsible for the key to growth for Dropbox and Slack. So we want to always keep that in check, because I think that plays a very strong value proposition for us, the word of mouth flywheel that we have working for us. So I think those are the two. And then besides that, we look at customer experience a lot. CSAT scores are very important for us. I think that, as I said before, that really paves the way for our future road mapping exercises.
Fantastic. Shardul, you want to?
If you can add, so apart from what Anshu covered, so from the customer facing product point of view, of course, our North Star metrics become an NPS, right? And specifically, when you're, and NPS tells us, our developers are loving our product, right? See, that once a developer loves your product, they recommend it. They to your fellow developers, and that's what creates a virality effect, right? They recommend it to different teams, and once you're part of your toolkit of your developers, then they use it. Developer, as they change the companies, they take it with you onto those different organizations also, right? And they always think about how they can solve their problem by using you. So the NPS plays a very bigger role. We measure it as frequently as possible. That we drive a lot of data. A lot of our roadmap is driven by NPS. Apart from that, I think apart from NPS, we also measure customer engagement metrics. Now, of course, depending on product, that customer engagement metrics varies. For example, for test automation product, what we measure is something called monthly active licenses or consumption. That means how many machines or parallels are being used by the customers every month. And why we measure this metric? Because it tells us how much value customers are getting out of what they are paying us for, right? The better the ML, we know the customer is getting a very good value out of our offering. But for our manual testing product, it's different, right? There we measure how many of the customer users are actively testing every month. That tells us, okay, how much they're using, again, value out of the manual testing product into their developing ecosystem. Apart from that, there are some more. I think, and see, these engagement metrics also plays a very important role, right? Because if they are healthy, we know the other metrics that they influence a lot of other metrics like a churn or even NPS, LTV. If the engagement metrics are healthy, all these metrics automatically usually points towards also being healthy. Apart from that, there are some internal metrics also that get measured. Some of them that directly we know influence our customer experience. So one, for example, our test infrastructure team measure very rigorously NDAs or NTAs. Now these are the metrics, means how many times the terminals were not allocated or devices were not allocated to the customer. We measure them, and we always make sure that those are kept under the very constant surveillance. And then metrics like those, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Shardul and Anshu. Probably a very, very important question. How to blitzscale as a PM, especially given the fact that the company is growing at a very, very rapid pace. Anshu, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I mean, being a part of a company which is on a path of blitzscaling is a huge learning advantage for any PM. Just to give a quick, like blitzscaling as a term was coined by Reef Hoffman of LinkedIn fame, where, what it means is that company needs to scale extremely fast to meet the needs of a global market, right? With a goal of having a first mover advantage. In the process of blitzscaling, you take a lot of risks and make calculated decisions to move fast. So at BrowserStack, I think while we focus, of course, you have to focus on building revenue and getting customers, like acquiring customers fast. But at the same time, the foundation of the company is built with the organization. So we need to make sure that we invest in a strong, scalable organization. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to support the other two goals, right? Hence, that's why we have a very strong focus on building platform teams. So even within the product org structure, we have two dedicated teams, which are product and business platforms. While they are not really customers facing, but they do support the internal teams to meet these goals and focus on improving. And like we actively work on focus and improving these streams, because otherwise it's very hard for you to support a business that is on the path of blitzscaling, right? And another part that is very important for a blitzscaling company is an experimental framework, right? Like in order to move fast, to take calculated risks, you need really good feedback from any experiments that you're running, like whether it's a pricing experiment that you're running, or whether it's a product messaging experiment that you're running on the website, or any or a different GTM strategy that you're applying. Like while you apply these strategies to be agile, your framework needs to support fast feedback. And that's the only way you can, take up the next step and grow at a very fast pace. So I think building that experimental framework can only be done at a platform level. Otherwise, it would just become redundant and then, messy to maintain. And that's why I think we base a lot of our work on building those strong foundational platforms.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think quickly moving ahead, how does one prepare for a PM role in DevTools? We briefly asked this question at some point in time in the past. So Shardul and Anshu, if you want to just quickly, identify those highlight title items.
So we already covered some aspects, specifically when I talked about the platform products, getting a very good understanding of those, and then looking at a DevOps ecosystem, and you can see that what kind of products are being built into the different stages of this DevOps lifecycle. I think to add to that, I would also recommend probably getting a little bit more, again, awareness or understanding of how the modern applications are getting built, right? What are the MVC frameworks that are very common these days are being that the developers are using? This is another big aspect, right? Because your customer, as a developer, developers are your customer. How they are building applications, you're solving the problems as they build those applications. So getting a little bit insight into that is a very, and again, you don't have to go very far. Just talk to engineers sitting next to you. They will tell you what are the challenges, what different frameworks they're using it. I think, and then another aspect which briefly we covered, right? Developer is a persona. So now in this ecosystem, when you're building a product, your products are experienced by developers through APIs, right? So that means now it is not very common to build API first product. So getting a little better understanding of that. And the only way you can do that by actually looking at the other products APIs, right? Payment gateways are most popular, just take a look at how those APIs are written. AWS, again, those APIs are available. Just go through them, get a little better understanding, okay, what kind of these multiple touch points are made available, why, what kind of request and response, how that interaction works. That will tell you a lot about how you can design APIs as you build a product for this, as you extend your product for this persona, right? Apart from that, documentation, right? So that's another skill is very important because these products are documentation play a very important role because that's how a lot of time your developers are gonna, the moment they see, before they even read through your landing page, they're gonna find where is the documentation to try out that hello world or very quick codes where they can try it out quickly, right? And that they need to get that. They're going to rely that on heavily on what kind of documentation is available, what kind of clarity is given, right? So, and that's also a little bit of combination of art and science. How do you do that? Again, the way to do that is just read the world-class documentation from the products such as Twilio, Square, AWS, Microsoft. You will learn a lot from that. Okay, how you structure the documentation so your users can experience your product either in very early stage or in advanced stage or somewhere when they're struggling with some specific problem, right? Then another important aspect is this is where because whatever product you build, right, it always goes into the pipeline of the overall software life cycle, right? That means the integration ecosystem around the problem you are solving becomes very important, right? So that's I will also, this is where you also build a lot of time, you have to build an integration first product also, right? Now what it means, like how you expose the different touch point, what are the areas you are taking a data in from other products, where what data you are exposing for other products to consume, right? And what does it mean for the actual user? It's not only how the problem you're solving, but where they want you to come and solve that problem as well, right? So another additional thing I will always recommend is to probably learn about IK effect. This is another place where IK effect is where it increases the appreciation for the your product because of the self-design and self-assemblement, right, for the product or solution by your user itself against this off the shelf. So this product, because they invest their time and energy of integrating how that, and this is where that you have to fine tune the balance between the ease of integration and then there is certain level of the self-determination also come into the play. So that is another very important aspect. I think additionally, in this ecosystem, in DevTools ecosystem specifically, the open source ecosystem plays a very bigger role. And then I think it is important to understand how the open source ecosystem works itself, right? Now, there are open source projects which are very, individual developer has put something out there, right? Versus there are some open source projects which are very popular, but primarily sponsored by one or two large organizations. And then there are large open source project which has a very high influence, has a very dedicated foundation behind it, which is funded by multiple different corporate companies. Why it plays a role? Because as a product manager, you are some point of time going to have to interact with them. You have to understand how the decisions are getting made. You're going to go with them and ask for some changes so your product can work easily with them, or you need to make some changes into your product, right? So getting a better understanding of how that ecosystem works, who are the right influencers, is also could play a role into to become a successful into the DevTools ecosystem specifically. I think apart from that, I think essentially, like I said, it's enterprise product management also in a sense, because you have a users and then you have a customer. So there are decision makers versus actually user. There's always going to be different. So every time you're building the features, you have to balance for that. And I think the other important aspect is that it's a lot of customer interaction. So that's another aspect to getting a very, you have to your own framework, how you interact with the customer, how you identify those customers, and then you want to setting up your own way of reaching out to this customer also become very, very important. Yeah, I think Anshu, you want to add something?
Just to quickly, I mean, I think sort of in tune with what you're saying, I think one part that is extremely key to understand our distribution models, especially when you're learning about or being a part of a product-led growth organization, right? Like traditionally for an enterprise size company, the sales cycle was generally used to work tops down, where you approach a CEO or a CIO, and then that's how that's how the sale was made. But here actually it happens bottoms up from the developer directly, right? Look, if you look at companies like Stripe or Slack or Datadog, and all of these companies have been successful because of really understanding the needs of that consumer, and a lot of it goes into it, right? A product, obviously, as I said, is almost like a prerequisite, but there are like a 2 or 3 other factors which I think one should be really prepared for. For example, understanding the right pricing or model fit that comes to a part of it. What is the channel through which you'll be approaching the customer? Will it be like a high touch or a low touch kind of a model? And then also like a product market fit. So I think understanding or a deeper understanding of all of these metrics and this kind of a distribution model will really help be successful as a part of the or a product-led organization.
Great, thank you so much, Anshu, Shardul. I think we've just about pacing right on time. Thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon. We have a lot of questions for you. And for those of you who have just joined in or are still joining in, you can go to slido.com, put in this particular number, slido.com, put in this particular number and ask your questions over there. It's a fairly easy interface. In case you're not able to figure it out, just put your questions in Zoom chat. But that's the best place to put your questions in. At this point in time, we're not going to take the questions. Let me quickly bring in Praveen and Ganesh. Let me quickly bring them in. We already spoke about them, but just to give you the high level introduction about both of them. I think these are the people who have been there when BrowserStack was 50-member team, and they're still here building this company day in, day out. And we're a 1,000-people company, and I think we're going to grow by a multiple. And they have a story to tell. Let me quickly make both of them as the co-host, and we can just quickly get started. So Praveen, why don't you quickly introduce yourself, and let me also get Ganesh.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Marish. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right, great. So thanks, Marish, and thanks, Shardul and Anshu for I think a great perspective on product management at BrowserStack and some of the skills required. Quick introduction about myself. I've been with BrowserStack for 5 years, recently completed 5 years. And I have BrowserStack to thank for many things in my life. I think probably the important one is I met my wife in Bombay because of BrowserStack. So I'm really thankful for that. But it's been a great ride. I think like Marish said, I joined the BrowserStack when we were, I think, approximately about 100 people. And I think there were 4 or 5 PMs, engineering teams of 4 or 5, and we've grown significantly since then, 800 plus. And I think that has come with its own experience and journey of learning how to scale a company and being exposed to all the different aspects of BrowserStack. I think that's one piece. Maybe I will just sort of do a little bit of a tangent here, but I think it sort of struck me, when I think Anshu and Shardul were talking about what life is like for a PM at BrowserStack. I think another important thing in my experience has been that, as PMs at BrowserStack, we are also, one of the biggest sort of important skills is problem solving, right? And it's a skill that can be applied to almost anything, right? Or can be applied to anything at a company. It doesn't necessarily need to be just product management. And in my experience, I've done multiple different things at BrowserStack, right? From building marketing to working on like SaaS billing platforms. So not classic sort of PM jobs that you would find at other companies, but I think the sort of the startup mentality that we have, and I think the flexibility that PMs are given to work on problems that they find interesting. And I think if you display the right sort of capabilities and attitude, I think you are not going to be boxed into just solving like one particular type of problem, right? I think that's great, the exposure that you get to all the different parts of the business at BrowserStack. I think that I'll stop with my introduction there.
Fantastic. Guys, I think if you can just go to Slido and quickly put in the one word that comes to your mind when you think about product management, that would really be interesting. Just to set the context for the next 30 minutes. So we have 12 votes in. A lot of people think about metrics and problem solving. Okay, you can also upvote the words, keywords that you think are important. Okay, can we have a couple of more? 14 and 15. Okay. So jobs to be done clearly. Nice.
Great. It's a great framework.
Fantastic. Okay, couple of more and then we move on to Praveen, who will be walking us through. 2020 is the flavor of the season. Let's cross 20. Okay, there we go. 20 is what we have. So Praveen, all over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Maresh. So I think we were discussing internally, what was like the single most important thing that if we had to communicate how product management works at BrowserStack, or sort of a central thing that all of us believe in very strongly. I think it's our framework for problem solving, right? So we have a artifact internally which we call a task brief, which is in other companies might be called a product spec. Maybe like sort of a one-page summary. In our case, it's typically not one page, it's much longer than that. But this is the framework that we try to apply to everything that we do at BrowserStack, right? And like I said, the problem doesn't necessarily need to be a product problem. It could be something else, right? It could be maybe you're trying to do something around growth, or you're doing something around marketing. But this framework can be applied broadly to any of those problems, and it's something that drives every conversation that we have as a team at BrowserStack. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go through these quickly, I have a couple more slides where we detail these out, and then Ganesh is going to jump into like a real example of a problem that we have solved in the past using this framework. So I think to start with, right, the first one is defining the problem statement, right? What is the problem? And we always start with a customer problem, I think there have been countless discussions that we have had where you would be amazed at how much time we've spent just trying to define the problem statement, right? There's nothing else that is more important than making sure you're solving the right problem, right? If Steve Jobs, one of the people that I look up to a lot, on all aspects, whether it's product or marketing or business, said that if you have defined the problem accurately, then you have half the solution already, right? So solving or coming up with the right solution starts with defining the right problem statement. The second part of this framework is who are we solving this problem for? So here, we look at personas and segments, right? So Shardul talked about, Shardul and Anshul both talked about developers, right? So developers, there are many kinds of developers, there are many kinds of QAs, right? So you have to break that down and understand, are you solving a problem for a front-end developer? Are you solving a problem for a manual QA, and an SDET who's doing automation testing? Are you solving a problem for a DevOps engineer who's involved in the CI/CD pipeline? So we try to define the personas very clearly, that okay, this particular feature or this particular product is solving a problem for this particular segment or this particular persona. And secondly, the segment sort of where that. So every developer or engineer works in a company, so what is the segment of that company, right? Like how big is that company? What is the scale of that company? What kind of software do they build? What kind of applications are they building? How many engineers do they have? Like, every company has like a broad segmentation, right, of its customers. So we try to understand that too. The third part is, why is it worth solving this problem, right? So, ultimately you need to be able to justify the business value of solving a problem, right? Ultimately all roads lead to revenue, right? You might be looking at a specific thing like NPS, like Shardul talked about, or you might be looking at retention or adoption, different metrics that you might be building, or different metrics that you might be trying to sort of move with a particular problem that you're trying to solve. But all of these will ultimately lead to revenue, right? Which is not to say that you measure revenue for everything that you do, but understand the clear relationship, between what you're doing and how it impacts ultimately the revenue for the business, right? Because if you're solving NPS, customers will be more happy. Customers are more likely to stay with your platform. Your renewal rates will go up, right? Your churn rates will go down. That means your revenue goes up. Good NPS also results in good word of mouth. which means that your growth will also be impacted, which ultimately will also impact revenue. Leading to the fourth one, which is how do you measure success, right? So fundamentally, how do you know that if you solve this problem, how do you know right? What is the measure of the impact of this feature that you're building or of this change that you're making? So this is critical. If you don't know how to measure the sort of the impact of solving this problem, then the question is really like, why are you doing it, right? Like, then you should think about how to measure it first, right? Before you think about solving the problem. And the fifth one, I think, is a little bit of a, I feel unique in the case of BrowserStack, because I think we talked about understanding the dev tools ecosystem and the tool sets that developers and QAs use, right? So it's very, very important to understand, number one, the workflow of your customer or your persona, right? So if, for us, a workflow starts with a developer writing the first line of code, or even before that, like a product manager defining a story, right? In a company, one of our customers, right? PM might write a story saying, user must be able to do X, right, in, let's say, 10 seconds. If that's the story, then the developer would take that and build it out, right? Write the code. Then that code would have to be merged, would have to be tested, and then it would have to be deployed. So that's a very, very gross oversimplification of the process. But you need to understand every little step that a developer takes in order to take that one line of code into production, right? And in that workflow, it is important to understand the specific feature that I am building or the specific problem that I am solving. How are users solving that today, right? Are they using some workaround? Are they either within your product, right? So a lot of times users will find interesting ways to use your product that you did not imagine, right? So they might be employing some sort of workaround, which is a strong signal that, hey, I think there is a lot of value here, and I need to build a feature to make this workaround simpler. Or users might be doing something outside of your product, right, to solve the problem. So it's very important to understand what the current behavior of the users today is. Moving on, Marish. Next slide. Yeah, so I think so that was a general framework, and now I'm going to double click into user experience problem, right? And how do we go about? And again, this is one example of solving UX experience problem in BrowserStack. So again, you will find a lot of repetition here from the previous slides, but again, start with the business objective. So if you're solving a user experience problem, right? Well, it could be that you are not seeing enough adoption of a particular feature, right? And you think your hypothesis is that it's because it's not getting enough visibility on your in your user interface, or it's being buried somewhere. So what is the problem that you're trying to solve with this, right? So whether are you trying to affect engagement, conversion, churn, NPS, many different metrics you can measure here. What are the customer problems linked to this business objective, right? So I think, again, here, understanding the customer, right, is critical here. I can't emphasize this enough. Understanding the customer workflow, how are they doing it? Where does BrowserStack or this particular feature of BrowserStack fit into the overall customer workflow? Whether if it's an SDET who's responsible for making sure that automation test suite runs, who's who's responsible for making sure that any bugs that are raised during the automation tests are filed correctly. Whether let's say they're using Jira or Asana. Making sure that those bugs are filed, making sure developers have the visibility about how to debug that issue and solve that issue, and then deploying that fix. So understanding that workflow, understanding where your product fits into that workflow is really important, and that will help you identify, what is the custom problem that you're solving. How can we validate if our hypothesis is true? That's number 3. So I think I read another quote recently. I think it was Steve Krug, who's sort of famous for talking about sort of user experience. He said that validating a solution with a user early on, right? Like validating one user early on is equivalent to validating 50 users later on, much later on in the product development process, right? So you want to try and get early validation of what you're building, right, as quickly as possible. Because, let's say 2 sprints down, your feature is already fairly mature and you're like very, very close to shipping. and then you start getting feedback, then, it might be too late, right? Or you might have to spend a lot more effort trying to pivot and make changes. So you want to try to get early validation as quickly as possible and think about how you can do that, right? Whether it's doing walking users through prototypes, or whether it's actually deploying something with A/B testing and testing if your hypothesis is playing out. Yeah. Okay, so now we're getting into the solutioning part of it, right? So the first part was really identifying the problem statements, identifying the metrics, getting some early validation. Now you're thinking about how do I solve this problem in the best way possible, right? So I think the important one, number 4 is around what is the benchmark, right, for this, and it's something that we also imbibe at BrowserStack is we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? And a lot of times, in the case of, let's say, user experience problems, there are a lot of companies, a lot of products that have solved this problem for you, right? Or solved this problem for their own set of users, right? Maybe it's not a direct sort of copy paste. It's more about how can you take inspiration, right, from a similar problem that has been solved, right? And doesn't necessarily need to be competitors, right? It could be something in a completely unrelated field, right? But the problem that's being solved is in a way very similar to what you're trying to solve. And then number 5 is how do you beat the benchmark, right? You want to try and define the benchmark saying, okay, let's say a common benchmark could be, okay, my sort of conversion rate for this particular feature, right, in the industry is, let's say, 5%, right? Of every 100 users who come in and see this particular feature, 5 people end up adopting it and using it on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, whatever your definition is for an engaged user. How do you beat that benchmark, right? And that's where sort of creative problem solving comes in, right? With working with developers and designers to really think about how do I solve this problem in a way that will help me beat this benchmark, right? And yeah, I think the last part is going back to the metrics that I was talking about. How do you know you've solved the problem, right? What metrics will you measure to ensure the problem is solved in the right way? And the important part here again is, if you have defined the problem statement very clearly, then these metrics should be very obvious. You don't want to get into the trap of defining vanity metrics and trying to measure something because you can, but it's not actually the right metric that needs to be measured. Yeah, we can keep going.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Praveen, for facing that. We had 20 questions when we started the last segment. Akshay Kumar just joined, by the way. And we have 25 now. So awesome. Let me just quickly bring in Ganesh here. And once we have Ganesh and Ganesh is kind of done with his segment, then I think we're going to have like all the panelists opened up quickly and we'll have like a quick round of questions getting answered. And we want to bring it down from 25 to maybe 15 in that particular segment. So Ganesh, can we just quickly have you on?
So how much time do I have, Mayuresh?
Ganesh, you can finish yourself in 12 to 15 minutes.
Sure, cool, okay, works. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for joining in on a Saturday. So basically, my segment is the simplest. So I'm just going to tell you a story about one of the projects that I have solved at BrowserStack like 5 years back. This is very close to my heart because this was my first project that I did at BrowserStack in 2016. And notoriously, I took 7 months to solve that problem, which was after like multiple missteps. So I'll basically walk you through all the entire problem statement and the missteps as well as the final solution. Hopefully you guys will benefit from this. To begin with, the context at BrowserStack at that time was we were very, very strong in desktop browsers. We had a huge assortment of Mac OS and Windows platforms. And we were getting into mobile devices also. We had launched Android as a platform and we were launching iOS as a platform. So this is the product of BrowserStack, right? We enable cross-platform testing. Anybody has a website? This is for the manual testing product in our website testing product, just to clear things out. So what happens is we give this assortment of products, like say somebody like uses a Mac to develop a website and they want to test it in Internet Explorer. It was like a big problem at that point. Like, how am I going to find an Internet Explorer when I'm using a Mac? Similarly, people using Windows, they couldn't access Safari. They need to install VMs, do a bunch of stuff. So that was the problem that BrowserStack was solving. And we were launching a lot of platforms at a very rapid pace. given this context, the business objective that was given to me was increase the number of combinations tested on BrowserStack. When I mean combinations, if somebody is testing only on one device or like one or two desktop browsers or devices, how do I get them to test on more things, right? On the face of it, it seemed like a very simple problem to me because I was a rookie PM. This was my first product management job. But the one point I want to iterate is, as a product manager, you will at BrowserStack, you will get these business objectives. Nobody will tell you, hey, build a Android app. Nobody will come to you with a solution. It will always be a business objective that is given to you. And then it is your job to figure out how to move that metric or how to improve that business objective. Right. So yeah, I got this business objective, number of combinations tested. It's an engagement metric. BrowserStack is a cross-platform company. The more combinations people test, the more value they derive out of the product. Very straightforward. So first thing I did, like if Amazon wants to make you buy more products, what do they do? Recommendations, right? Like recommendation is like the simplest way to get somebody to take another action. So I started with that immediately as soon as somebody clicked on say iPhone 10 at the time, I think iPhone SE or 10 at the time, immediately I would show the next device, do you want to test on Android? And nothing happened. Like less than like 0.5% of our users even clicked on the next button because primarily it wasn't of value to them. Like just throwing in random recommendations didn't work. And as a product manager, this is exactly the thing that you want to avoid. You don't want to ship something and then figure out, oh, this is not working. It needs to be preempted. That is like my number one lesson at that point in time. Like I shipped this feature and then we realized this is not working. And then we went back to the drawing board. And then like it took some time for me to, I generally knew it. But one thing that I internalized at the point after like a couple of months is that you need to keep customer first. In case you want to move a metric, irrespective of what metric it is, you need to somehow translate that into a customer problem. That's what Praveen also mentioned in his previous talk, right? The immediate step after getting the business objective is we try to translate it into a customer objective. Now, in terms of what is a customer objective here, like I didn't know what the customer, what problems do I need to solve for like this problem. Like in case you guys have any ideas, why would a customer not test on multiple combinations? Please put that on Zoom chat in case, and we'll probably have a look at that later. Now this is the problem statement. So what I did was I started scheduling calls with multiple customers and then started asking them. Basically, you can't just go and talk to every customer that BrowserStack has. It has like 100 and like as they mentioned 4 million users. Like I can't just go to 4 million users and ask their thing, right? Like so what we did was we segmented customers, people who are testing on like a limited number of combinations. And then so we went and spoke about that. Ramandeep has answered tight deadlines to deploy, so skipping devices with way less coverage. Excellent answer. That was one of the things that we found out. So we went and spoke to customers. There were multiple insights that came from customers. Number one insight, and this was primarily, I was trying to move people from desktop to mobile as well as a part of our strategy. So the first thing that people told was like, I don't have a responsive website. So why would I test on mobile? I don't have a need to test on mobile. My website works only on desktop. Okay, so what do I do to move these people? There is nothing that I could do. Second kind of people, mine is an internal tool. Like it's okay if it just works on Internet Explorer. I don't have to worry about like supporting Chrome or Firefox. My entire company has mandated use of Internet Explorer to every employee. They cannot even use another browser. So I just need to make it work on Internet Explorer. So yeah, that was another kind of insight that came in. The third kind of insight came from developers who said, I just want to fix this bug in this one combination. Like my user has reported a bug in say iPhone 10. Now I need to fix only that bug. I don't have to test on multiple combinations. This was like one more kind of insight that came from our customers. And then these were like some examples of insights. We get like 14 to 15 types of insights. I think there is one more comment. Product is predominantly, yeah, perfect. That's awesome, Arun. I didn't read this comment before mentioning it. This is perfect. So, and finally, when we classified all of this, one thing stood out to us. Majority of our customers told, I don't know what combinations I should be testing on. Basically, I rely on latest devices. That's all I do. Like whatever you put it as latest, that's what I click, that's what I test, because I'm not sure what devices I should be testing my application on. This is one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum were people who said, I look into my Google Analytics, whatever Google Analytics tells me, I'm going to use it. But they also mentioned a problem saying but Google Analytics tells me only the past. Like if Apple is launching an iPhone next week, I'm not going to know that in my Google Analytics. I need to still test that in that latest device and then keep the application running. So these were the different ways we reached out to customers, spoke to at least 50 of them. And then the final customer problem statement that we narrowed down is people do not know, some of our users do not know or have trouble in deciding which devices they should be testing on. So we locked down this problem. We validated, okay, if I solve this problem of educating customers on what devices they should be testing on, naturally my metric of number of combinations tested on BrowserStack is going to improve. So effectively, we have translated that business metric into an actionable customer metric, which can be solved in variety of different ways. But mind you, I've already spent 2-3 months shipping out features that didn't work. So this time my thought process was, how do I validate it immediately? So instead of going to engineering team or design team, the solution started just like most of the solutions in the world starts with an Excel sheet, where we basically put together every possible devices, browsers, combination. And one more thing that we found out during our customer thing is this is not as much as a problem in desktop. It was majorly a problem in mobile devices. So what we then put out is we created an Excel sheet full of combinations, all the mobile devices, and then the parameters that people might use to pick those devices. If you were to start testing on a mobile device, what are the parameters that you would use? It would be the size of the screen. It would be the processing power, CPU, RAM, resolution, battery life. And the what amount of OS coverage, which OS it is in, and when was it launched? What is the market share? What popularity in which markets? So we sort of assembled all of those in a Excel sheet. And then we tried coming up with a model which would basically optimize this for depending on which geography you are building the product for. And at the same time, what is your traffic level in general? Again, this is a very big problem to solve. So we further cut the scope down. We said, okay, I'm not going to focus on any other geographies except US and Europe, because that's where majority of our customers back then was. So we just go down to that geography. And then we decided, and then we launched a simple page. It's not a feature, it's just a landing page. Mayuresh, you can go to the next slide. So this is how this page looked. It basically said, if you are a company which is just starting up and does and this was another problem. Earlier, we had only these headlines, starting up, growing business, enterprise. If you are an enterprise, test this. If you are a growing business, test this. If you are starting up, test this. And immediate feedback from customers was, which one am I? How do I find out which am I a growing business or starting up? So we need to provide some proxies for them. So we said up to 15,000 unique visitors, you might consider yourself this. So a better, more specific way of for them to start looking at things. So once we add this, we ship this feature. And obviously, once you ship a landing page, you don't expect people to find it miraculously. You need to work towards building links to this page, exposing people. One great advantage I had was the product had a lot of visitors. So we put it in the product saying, hey, are you confused about which devices you should be testing on? Please use this link. And additionally, whenever you are launching a page like this for a brand like BrowserStack, you need to be doubly sure whatever you are doing is right. It can't be if people start disagreeing with you on this, then that itself becomes a huge debate. So we reached out to industry stalwarts who are our customers, who are our champions, who are our major influences at that time, right? We spoke to people who were in jQuery, who were in Firefox. They give us some valuable feedback around how they look at devices to test. So we incorporated all of those and reached out to some of our customers to get more feedback as well. And then we sort of launched this page. And as soon as we launched this, we saw some great traction from users. Right, let me just check. Ramandeep has a question. Why your business team was focusing on cross-device testing? What was their hypothesis? Okay, let me answer that in a bit. So after this happened, so once we launched it, and then Mayuresh, you can go to the next slide. So So remember, the business objective we wanted was cross-platform testing. The problem we was trying was increasing how am I educating users to solve the problem of which devices they need to be testing on. So one initial indicator that we got was there was like great amount of engagement and shares on this page. People were sharing it unprompted on social media, and it was getting a lot of traction. And we were getting a lot of activity on the page as well. Like people would reach out to us saying, hey, you have done it only for North America. I'm in Portugal. What do you suggest me to do? Do you have a similar thing for desktop? Like we used to get a lot of these traction as well. So even though we didn't build all of those, that traction along with the engagement and shares told us that we are in the right direction to moving, right? So once we had this thing, then we built out the recommendation engine at BrowserStack at that point, which was basically built on this entire premise. I'm going to educate people on how to test, and this is how we are going to do it. So now going back to Ramandeep's question, why did we choose? Again, there is no business team which chooses, it's just a business objective. The business objective is still chosen by the product team, like product team in consultation with everyone involved, right? So the nature of objectives is like, it starts with, as a group, we decide what are the problems that we want to be tackling in the next 6 months or in the next 1 year, that will be like super beneficial to our business, at the same time extremely important to our customers. Now, here the major thing for choosing a number of combinations as a metric was at that point in time, we were adding a lot of new platforms in BrowserStack. We had launched first time mobile, as I mentioned before, and hence it was very, very important to improve the adoption of those platforms in BrowserStack. That's the reason number of combinations was chosen at that time. Now, engagement metrics, right now we don't focus on one engagement metrics. There are like multitude of engagement metrics for us, right? Like say, for example, frequency, as Shardul mentioned while he was talking, number of users who are active on a monthly basis or a daily basis or a weekly basis. Number of combinations is one more. So yeah, there are a variety of different metrics. This was an important metric back in like say 2015, 16. So yeah, so once we shipped this product and then we built out the recommendations. After we built out recommendations, this time the recommendation logic was very solid. So the idea is not like the solution remained the same. What I did for the first time was still build out the same recommendation, same UX. But what I built out the last time was also the same. It's just that the amount of work or the amount of details that you need to put into to get to that solution is what matters. And if you do not have a customer connect in that, like if you're doing something because the business wants you to, or because like you think it is awesome, or you believe that you are the customer, in some cases you might be the customer, but it is always better to get that input from customer. And we have improved a lot over time, right? Because back in 2016, when I wanted to speak to those 50 customers, it took me like a month to get calls, schedule those calls, get to them, speak to them. But now we have like a lot of tools at our disposal. Yeah, getting to calls is still the best way, but there are other things like, can you run in product surveys? Can you like integrate? Is there a way that you can encourage customers to reach out to you rather than you reactively reaching out to customers, right? So we have incorporated all of that. Now we have like a solid user research mechanism at BrowserStack, which we are leveraging. So yeah, we measured this, we launched this, and then finally we saw the number of combinations increase as well. Just wanted to share this example with you. And the key takeaway, if I need to summarize, is we always start with business objectives and then we translate it into customer objectives. We don't immediately ship solutions because we have design engineering, that it's a lot of cost, is a lot of bandwidth. So we try to validate as much as possible and prove that the solution will work. And then we launch that solution, and then we track relevant metrics, either as leading indicators and like how well we are doing with respect to the business objectives that we identified. So yeah, thanks a lot. I think I'm on time and I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Ganesh. I think really refreshing always to hear you out, all the stories coming out. Fantastic. We have 26 questions. Guys, don't go anywhere. Absolutely don't go anywhere. I just want to make sure that you meet the last guest for the day. And he is the Vice President of the entire people team, the human resources team at BrowserStack. And he wants to also have a quick word with all of you. Before that, we just want to make sure that we're going to take some of these questions really, really fast. And I would just request all of you, Praveen, Ganesh, Shardul, Anshu, to be online, and let's just quickly get some of these questions answered. Question number one. Yes, so given that we have the developer as the primary persona, how do you develop user empathy? Ganesh, you want to take it? 30 seconds.
Sure. As I mentioned, like we still user empathy is basically putting yourself in the shoes of the customer, right? Understanding and experiencing what the customer is going through. One way is like definitely talking to customers. We have visited customers. We spend time in their environment, understanding how they set up, how they test, how they choose devices, how they choose their testing frameworks and all of that. Talking to customers is one. So again, as Anshu mentioned while talking in a fireside chat, we use Delighted and similar tools to capture qualitative feedback from customers. That also gives us a lot of information about what they think. So basically these two channels, and then the rest of it is like depending on a case-by-case basis with respect to the problems.
Fantastic. Ravin, you want to quickly take this question with respect to how do we run the A/B testing experiments on the product side specifically? How do we go about hypothesizing? Any examples you want to share?
Sure. So I think A/B testing, I'm keeping a video off because I think my connection is a little flaky. So in terms of A/B testing, yes, we are running A/B testing experiments constantly. We use both a combination of off-the-shelf tools and inbuilt in-house tools that allow us to expose features to a random sample, to a specific set of users, coming in from a particular geography. So yeah, it's something that I think it's core to our philosophy of experimenting and I think discovering if our hypothesis is correct, right? And I think in terms of how the product team goes about hypothesizing, starts with I think what Ganesh talked about, problem statements, defining the customer problem very clearly, and then your hypothesis is around hey, will this solution work, right? Like you might have 2-3 different options, and then you sort of go about with experiments to try these different experiments. Yeah.
Fantastic. Ganesh, back to you. How much of your time as a product team is spent in educating the end users, given the fact that we are a very niche product? Chaitanya Prabhu has this question.
So it depends on the nature of the product, right? Our manual testing products, that is not a problem because it is like one click, you start on a device. There is nothing to educate. One way of education is like device selection that I mentioned, and that is also only a subset of users, not all users. So we have a spectrum of users. Like one side, we might have to help users identify their testing needs. On the other side, people are very ahead of the curve, and they teach us how to think about the market, and they tell us they give us the initial signals of where the market is heading. So I would split it product wise. In like a live and app live, it is not that much. In automate and automate, maybe slightly more, but not to a great extent considering our market itself is like a wide variety in a different spectrum.
Fantastic. Can you quickly have this question? What tools do we use at the design team for prototyping? Anshu, you have a perspective on this?
Yeah, I think we primarily use Figma for prototyping of most of our design tools. I think it's all done on Figma. A bit of it on Sketch, but primarily we use Figma.
Fantastic. Let me take this question. Any products in pipeline for testing blockchain and decentralized use cases? So Rahul, very happy to hear more from you. If you can just write in to us, you can write to mayuresh.s@browserstack.com. And what is your use case? Very happy to learn about what is it that you're building and how we can collaborate. Is it on the roadmap, not on the roadmap? Maybe not the forum to comment on it, but very happy to hear you out of what you have in your mind with respect to this particular thing. In the interest of time, since the time is ticking away, we want to get in Jerry, and we will come back to this particular forum, and we promise that we'll make sure all these questions are answered. Before that, if we can just quickly go on and meet. We can go on and meet Gerald Menezes. He's the Vice President People. We all call him Jerry. He's on the mission impossible. He's on the mission to make the whole thing possible. An industry veteran. He's done multiple scale-ups on the people front. and he's here to make sure that BrowserStack achieves the next level of growth, the next wave and cycle of growth. Jerry, over to you. And let me just quickly add you as the co-host. Jerry, I believe you should be able to now unmute yourself and.
Oh, yes.
Fantastic. Over to you.
Mayuresh, thank you. Thank you for what has been an awesome discussion. Mayuresh, Praveen, Ganesh, Shardul, Anshu. And thank you to all the audience for making it on a Saturday. We all have plans of ourselves, and then to squeeze out time to self-invest, to learn, to become better, to gain insights on what's happening in the industry. I think incredible. You are a few of a kind, and we appreciate you making time. From a people perspective, again, let me just provide you a quick intro. I've been assigned the responsibility to help the leadership build an awesome place to work. So that's the journey that we're walking. I've been here about 7 months. It's been an incredible experience because I come from a very, very different ecosystem. BrowserStack has been something totally different. Again, needless to say, while I lead the people function, I think a whole lot of learnings, right, that we gain are from the product leadership. Just the way we create great products is exactly we are creating a great brand, getting great people to build in. So through all of our business journeys, right, be it product, be it engineering, be it sales, I think the one thing that is exceptionally well understood within BrowserStack is the fact that everything else can happen only when you have great people onboarded. And that leads me to just give you a little bit about, Anshu spoke about, our direction to go remote first. We did, I think we were the first ones in this country to announce a remote first direction. And I was talking to you about the very deep, very clear understanding amongst the people, the leadership at BrowserStack. The people enable everything else, right? Everything else that you do to the customers, your products, your services, your stakeholders, all of that is fundamentally dependent on your people. So, and people for us is our core, competitive advantage. So I've been parts of discussions where a whole host of the discussion is, will people feel comfortable to come to office? Can people work from home? Is productivity getting impacted and stuff like that? So those are some of the discussions I've been a part of outside of BrowserStack in the HR fraternity. But it was so beautiful to be a part of a discussion where the leadership actually came in and said, let us please understand what is our competitive advantage, right? What exactly is our competitive advantage? And we aligned very quickly that people are our competitive advantage. And then we said, if you want to really retain our competitive advantage, what should we do? How is the best way we can bring all of them together and create great experiences, right? And that thought basically culminated with all of us, I think, unanimously signing up on the remote first. Of course, as a direction we have signed up, we are still working the wheels to get the operational, framework created. And needless to say, I think, in one of the early surveys that Mayuresh conducted on this platform, I think close to about 39-40%, 45% people basically said they are investing close to 4 to 8 hours on calls, right? So there are certain challenges that we are undergoing now. And I think we as an organization are leading the industry discussion on how can you do a hybrid or a remote first and yet continue to create a great place, an awesome organization that continues to create innovative products, okay? So that's the discussion. It has been accepted very, very well by the market. Some of you would have seen those posts on LinkedIn. The other reason why we felt a remote first will work well for us was, we at our home is our space. It is like when you watch some sports events, the commentators basically say, this team has a home advantage, right? So what better place to be in than have our colleague work from home, from amongst his or her family, from the ecosystem that has nurtured and grown him, because that is probably the only way he will be free, he will be liberated to give his best while creating something for us, right? So that was on the remote first. I'm happy to hear more thoughts on how we can operationalize this better. You can get me on LinkedIn, Gerald.Menezes. I think, the last 10 years, Mayuresh did mention our first 100 or 1,000 customers just happened. Okay, we didn't even have to push our products. You would also be surprised to know that it's only like the middle of last year that we started thinking about sales leadership, because till then sales were just happening. Even now they're happening. We just want to put a rigor to it. So the organizational growth has been so huge, so fast, and so varied. Needless to say, I think if you just jump on if you're a part of that bandwagon, you will experience everything that BrowserStack goes through. Even now, right? I'm not sure how many of you have ever been on a product discussion where an HR team member is a part of. Today, I am delighted to let you know that there are at least 7 or 8 of us on this platform. That is how well this organization is integrated. What's happening in the product space, what's happening in the engineering space, what's the kind of relevance we are creating in the sales organization, how are we pitching our products to our users. I think all of those things, every team experiences. That's also a function of, we are big. We are about 850 people, growing to about 1250 sometime soon. And just about a year and a half back, we were about 300. So think about the journey, 300 to 850, and now pushing 1250 maybe by the end of March of next year. It's growing. But what we are very, very specific about is every individual is deeply an integral part of this journey. We do not have passengers. We have people who are adding that alpha. A couple of days back, right, just as a prep, because this was like my first time on a discussion on the products, I was doing a little bit of a deep dive. And I'm absolutely proud to let you know that at BrowserStack, we don't work on features. We don't work on smaller parts of something. We actually work on real problems, right? Problems that impact our lives, problems that make living and societies better. Our product, our service in itself is driving a meaningful adoption of the digital ecosystem, right? It's helping more and more people get onboarded on the digital platforms. Again, there is a huge temptation amongst professionals to kind of get into Google and see how can we solve a problem. Again, another thing that I'm very, very proud of is the problems that we solve are not found on Google. Okay, we identify those problems, we hustle around it, and we create a solution. And everything that this organization, every individual does kind of impacts the revenue and the top line, and more importantly, a customer experience. And when you are in an organization that is doing so much and you're an integral part of it, a 360-degree learning is just by default. You don't even need to make an effort at it, right? You are there, starting in the middle of the organization. Everything breezes past you. It is up to you to grasp and extract whatever learning you would want to do. Of course, in terms of our compensation, a very highly competitive compensation across the market. In terms of benefits, of course, I will discount this because I think there are very, very competitive practices in the marketplace. But here's what I want to let you know, just as one last addition from me. We are a very, very flat organization, and we are very clear that even if we touch 3,000, 3,500, 4,000, we would want to be that flat. That is one. When that happens, I think there is an immense opportunity for as many people as possible to gain a very direct experience and connect with the developer persona that we are trying to create a solution for, right? And that kind of puts such an immense pressure on all of us to be better at what we do each day. At the beginning, Anshu made that statement. She came in from the fintech space, and at fintech, you're just serving a solution that most people are aware of, and she made that statement. But where we are, And so our users have a very, very deep understanding of what their problems are. They know the engineering that goes beyond it. They know what's available in the market space. They know exactly what's the outcome, right? So when you land up in a place like this, each day, in each problem that you jump into, you need to be your best and better than what you were yesterday. One final thing, and I think Ganesh mentioned that very specifically. He said in his early days at BrowserStack, he took about 7 months to solve a problem, and there were missteps. And here is a leader within BrowserStack actually letting people know that this organization provides you the air cover to do something new, to try something new. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how many times you fall. It's about your willingness, your desire, your inclination to get up and continue that journey. And I think everybody on this call, Shardul, Mayuresh, Anshu, Ganesh, Praveen, all of them have many, many such success stories that were a result of many missteps that all of us would have taken. So there is air cover, there is opportunity to try something new. I will close this discussion by just making one statement. During this weekend, make some time for yourself and ask yourself, when was the last time you did something for the first time? BrowserStack provides that platform every day. Mayuresh, thank you so much for leading this so beautifully. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Since I think you're the man here, I think this is a question I want you to take. How do you define success at BrowserStack? I mean, if you could share your thoughts.
Oh, I think you have the right person here, Mayuresh, because I think the first 2/3 of my life, I chased the wrong parameters as success. It's only much later that I realized what success for me means. I think success for me is about how you go through all of those situations that life throws at you and extract meaning from those. A meaning that helps you be better prepared when you run into that situation or a similar situation the next time, right? It's about the situations that you go through when you pause and you say, how do I navigate this ecosystem? How do I socialize my ideas? How do I influence decision making, right? How do I drive in a more aligned ecosystem? So I think when you go through situations, your ability to extract that essence from the situation, the learnings, right? Since my daughter is 16, Mayuresh, and since the last 6-7 years, the moment she comes back from school, I don't ask her, what the teachers taught her. I actually ask her, I said, what have you learned in the day, right?
Yeah.
Aapne kya sikha? What is the essence you are learning? So it helps you be better prepared for life the next day. I think for me, that is success. And that essence of learning, right? The hundreds of failures that I would have experienced in my last 30 years of life and the few successes, I think all of that put together, if somebody is willing to take that from me, I'm happy to pass it on in the next 2.5, 3 years. I think that is success. Fantastic. How can I help a bigger population, more people be better prepared for life? Mayuresh, if that helps in any way.
Absolutely. A couple of questions, more factual in nature, but maybe you or Ganesh, both of you can just chime in your thoughts. Is it true that BrowserStack recruits PMs that have at least 2 years of software development experience? Ganesh, any thoughts on this?
So it depends on the product line, right? Like we have seriously technical products. Okay, we have multiple types of products. We have manual testing products. We have automated testing products, and we have business platform products, product platform products. It's only in one of those divisions where we need software development experience, and that too not software development experience. It can be even experience outside of software development. Even if you had done a side project in tech, it's basically our way of measuring, can you get in front of a customer and have a discussion about a technical architecture? And does technology excite you? These are the parameters that we evaluate. And so it need not be professional software development experience as well. And as I said, we have multiple divisions. It is just in one of those divisions where we need people who have been developers before. And in our functions, we have people who have been designers, move into product management, and people from other product management domains, not necessarily in developer products, other domains who have transitioned to dev tools product management without developer experience.
Fantastic. Jerry, I think a question for you. How do you plan to build personal connect in the remote first? 30 seconds on that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think, Marish, good you asked. I think with all of the Zoom calls that we are all attending, there is a very strong vertical alignment that's happening. We are missing out on the organizational or the horizontal connect. What we intend to do is we want to put in place a couple of things. One, I think the people that we are bringing in at the manager and above level, we are not just looking at their abilities to manage teams. Like till about a year and a half, we were looking at people who are able to manage teams in office. Now we are looking for people who are able to kind of just manage a diversity of teams globally and virtually. That's one. Two, we are putting in place frameworks that at the beginning will kind of mandate a cross-team, intra-team connect. So there are that's second. Three, I think just from a reward and recognition standpoint, we are making all efforts to highlight more and more wins that happen across the organization, not just vertically. So I think that is to begin with, and I think when it gains speed, it will be a self-driven motion.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Praveen, in case you're around, I think this is a question right up your alley. And in case Praveen, you're not able to hear.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Sure. So I think high availability of products is of supreme importance. And are the products hosted on a private data center or on a public cloud? You may just want to generally comment on what we do at Test Infra.
Yeah, sure. So I think our test infrastructure, right, which is the core platform which provides all the browsers and devices to our customers, those are all hosted by us. So they're not hosted on any public cloud. They're all like I think like Mayuresh referred to in the beginning, building a platform of real mobile devices and scaling it where we are running 72 billion Selenium commands a year on those browsers and devices. That is a lot of hard engineering work that has gone into solving that problem. And that is completely built in-house. We co-locate in data centers around the world, but it's all our own sort of setup and configuration. So we don't use any public cloud providers for that.
Shardul, in case you're around, does the product team at BrowserStack have ownership of customer retention, or is it like a pure sales team KRA?
So as a product team, we look at a customer retention as a more from the adoption point of view, which is not directly to the individual customers, but overall the product team is responsible for the adoption of their product, onboarding of the product. They play a very key and important role in that aspect, but at the general product level, not at the individual customer level. Yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome. Ganesh, if you were to just summarize, is there like a central philosophy at play at BrowserStack when it comes to managing products? What would that be? Say in a couple of bullet points.
So central product philosophy would be like data focused and customer focused. It's both. And if I were to put it as a trade-off, prefer customer over what data says. Like if data and customer disagree with each other, we go with the customer, not with the data. That is something central. And the second one, more than product philosophy, it is about what are the areas of responsibility of product management at BrowserStack, right? And that is like customer happiness, product engagement, and like enabling other revenue teams like product sales on like our product growth team, sales team, customer success team, enabling other teams being like the fulcrum for all of those teams. And finally, product strategy and launching new product lines. So these are the 4 areas of responsibility, and like both listen to both customer and data and listen to customers more. That would be the philosophy.
Superb. Jerry, what does the product organization look like at this point in time? And just extending the question, how do you think the product organization will look like maybe 18 months down the line? Any thoughts on that?
Mayuresh, I am aware of what's coming our way. So one, I think the product team is where it should be, up front and center, leading everything else that's happening within the ecosystem. That's clearly there. Today, I won't talk about the team size. I think I'll talk about the relevance, the impact, the meaning it has to our purpose, right? Very deeply ingrained. Everybody is very clear about it. Today we have 5 products, right? 4 that we created internally, 1 that we acquired. And needless to say, any organization looks forward for a much larger product portfolio. And in the space that we are in, I think there are immense number of opportunities for us to come together and create what the market needs. I think that is all that I can talk about, Mayuresh, without letting everything out at this point of time.
Fantastic. I think the message is loud and clear, and thank you so much for that. Rajendran has a question. Anshu, in case you just want to take this one, how do you prioritize something? How do you prioritize features at BrowserStack? There are a couple of questions around feature prioritization. And if you just want to share, how do you work with engineering teams? Like how deeply entrenched you are? So Anshu, if you are around.
Yeah. So yes, do product product managers and EMs actually act as almost like joint owners from a product ownership standpoint. Like what product managers do is basically we are responsible for prioritization, and the way we go about it is generally we always start with like what are the company OKRs and company metrics, right? And I think that's sort of always a starting point for us. And as I mentioned before, we have different requests from different teams coming in with respect to what projects to take, and generally that's more in line with whatever the company OKRs are, and that's how it sort of goes in tune with how we prioritize them.
Fantastic. I'll just take this question quickly. Do we maintain internal product wikis, and what tools do we use? Apart from Confluence, there are a few tools that we use, but just to be very clear, simple, documentation is taken very, very seriously. It's very sacrosanct, whether you are on the product side of things, engineering side of things, strategy, marketing, HR. It's a very sorted house internally. It's a practice that has been built and matured over a period of time. So short answer, yes, Confluence, and totally leveraging it and going forward. Rohit has a question with respect to any specific framework across the org that we use for prioritization. Ganesh, you want to take this?
Sure. There are different, like at least in the product org, there are different frameworks for prioritization. One of the standard is like RISE, right? Like how much reach, impact, confidence you have on the impact, and then the effort. Basically, we look at in the current, it depends on a feature by feature. Number one, we first look at the effort. If the effort is less than 1 week and some of our customers need it, we do it immediately. We don't try to like prioritize that, schedule that, and all of that stuff. If it's useful for the customers and takes less than 1 week to build, it's a no-brainer. We will build it. If it is like significant effort, then we move into like what percentage of the customer base will this feature benefit, and then we will try to scope down the problem into like a smaller chunk. Just classify the problem, like split the problem into multiple phases, and then start shipping as soon as possible. So overall, RISE is the framework, and not necessarily the standard RISE, where we make a decision based on the effort at the beginning.
Absolutely. Let me take this particular question. What tools do we use for monitoring product metrics? Multiple, but just to name a few: Amplitude, Looker, BigQuery. So all the product managers at BrowserStack are expected to be hands-on with respect to crafting queries, need to know what are the various table schemas, totally hands-on. Ganesh, anything that I'm missing with respect to tooling on the monitoring of product metrics?
No, these are the tools that we use for product metrics.
Perfect. Awesome. Quick question. Again, which OKRs, wireframing do we use for product success? Again, related tools. So just taking it. Anshu, you want to take this one?
So I'll take it probably. So OKRs and wireframing tools, as Ashu mentioned, we use Figma. And apart from Figma, for motion design, we also use Principle in some cases if it is like extreme motion design. And in terms of OKRs, as I said, OKRs for product team would revolve around product engagement, NPS of the product, supporting other teams, and launching new products.
Shardul, you want to take this one maybe? Can you share your UX research process?
I think Ganesh might be the more. Ganesh, you want to take this one?
Sure. Yeah. UX research for us is multiple phases, right? One is like understanding the problem, and the second one is like, as Praveen mentioned in his framework, it's both problem and solution. One is identifying and researching problem, and the other one is testing solutions. So UX research starts with first secondary research. we generally don't go to customers and ask for basic details because it's a waste of their time. So we start with secondary research, Hacker News, Stack Overflow. Like developer products have like a lot of, we have this luxury of having so much information available on the web. So we start with that, build our hypothesis, build a case of what we want to understand from our users, and then go to them for like overall understanding of their workflow and how they make decisions about testing. This is on the problem side. On the solution side, it's majorly about once we have like a major feature, like redesigning our dashboard, we have like the mock-up of the dashboard ready and we do a usability testing with some of our top customers. So these are the two major areas in terms of usability testing and user research at BrowserStack.
Fantastic. Again, Ganesh, if you can just answer the first part, how does the company counter competition? I'm not sure if AWS is the right placeholder there. And Jerry, if you can take the second part, what is the USP of BrowserStack? Again, it may not be on the technical side of things, but yeah, Ganesh first.
Sure. So for us, competition, at least in our understanding, is like, let's say you want to test on a device and you don't have that device. What do? It's not necessarily competition. It's more like alternatives that BrowserStack has, right? The single most important competition for us is people trying to do it internally. Like they will go to their friends, hey, can you give me this? Do you have this device? Do you have this browser? Or they, if in case of like, say automated products, they will go to an open source tool, trying to sort of understand if they can set up that open source tool themselves. So more of competition is not about existing players. It's all about like the alternatives that people use. And for those alternatives, we are actively working on how can we improve the product offering. Say, for example, integrating more developer tools within our product and manual testing will help them like come to our product rather than going to friend and asking for a device. Jerry, over to you for the second part of the question.
What is the USP of BrowserStack as per?
Mayresh, I just want to make sure that they would want to know the USP of BrowserStack as a culture or
Yes.
BrowserStack as a product.
I think more on the first side mentioned. That's why
a couple of things, right? One, I think the one thing that the leadership has consciously ensured we do is as we have grown, every individual has stayed connected within this organization. For people that have worked in large organizations, you'll be able to know exactly the relevance of that. If there is one thing that keeps us awake, and one fear that we have is of us falling into a space where we commoditize relationships. We don't want to do that. I think every individual that is a part of BrowserStack brings in a particular flavor to us, and we consciously want to ensure that we bring in the diversity, we invest, and we nurture the diversity. Mayuresh, I'll just give one example, like one more minute I'll take. All of you, right, by virtue of the rich experiences that you carry, you would have experienced that organizations that go out and hire the finest of everything that is available, and they pay a premium, right? They will hire, like in my parlance, and pardon my analogy, I just speak about it because it's easy to relate. It's like somebody going and buying the best of mangoes, best of cauliflowers, best of brinjals, and the best of everything. And then once we bring them in, what use is it to beat them up and then trying to make them like us? An organization should hire and onboard diversity and invest in that diversity becoming better at what they are, not better at becoming like us. Then you lose the relevance, right? BrowserStack, as I see, we go out, we get the finest from wherever it is available, and we invest in that finest to become better at what they are good at. I think that for me is a USP that stands out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jerry. Couple of quick ones I'm going to take. Dhruv Dahiya has asked this question. Do you have data analysts for complex data crunching? Short and a long answer. Yes, we have a very well-defined role and profile for data analysts. It's both a centralized function as well as people planted across teams. So that just reinforces how important this is for all of us. I would just like to take this particular question over here. Again, do attendees get direct call for the interview and the screening is waived? So the very simple and key point over here is that the process that you go through at BrowserStack is possibly one of the most rigorous, well-defined, multi-stage, and there are various fits that are sought. Ganesh, you want to just comment on this particular thing? It's asked in a very lighter way, but I think just need to reinforce the point of the screening /
Sure.
process.
I mean, screening waived will be a decision of the talent acquisition team, but I can tell you post that what to expect. So we look for three things. One is like functional skills, domain skills, and personal attributes. These, put simply, these are the three things that we look for. Functionally, it's basically, are you user focused? Like basics of UX are in place. So the common product management things, right? Domain wise, it depends on the team that you are interviewing for. So most likely the screening, the major part of screening is like not so much to assess you, but to sort of fit you into the right team where you will be successful at BrowserStack. That's the reason screening process waiving might not be so easy, because we have like so many other teams. So depending on your experience, it would be easy for us to place you in the right team where you will be successful. So domain skills will depend on the team in which you will be interviewing for. If it is app automate, as I mentioned earlier, it will be your software development experience or some amount of inclination that you have shown to development before. If it is like manual testing, some amount of, again, slight development, but more of a design would be the domain standpoint. And from like the third round personal attributes, it would be primarily, as Mayuresh mentioned, documentation is sacrosanct at BrowserStack. So it would be more around how brief, how concise you are in terms of communication, how well you can articulate your point. Those are some of the personal attributes that we test. So yeah, short answer, functional, domain, and personal attributes are the three things that we look for.
Fantastic. Guys, so I think we are very much at the end of the time that was earmarked for this particular event. Nonetheless, I think we'll just quickly go through the remaining 11 questions. I just want to thank you all and just want to make sure that stay plugged into the BrowserStack ecosystem. There are tons of events that keep on happening all around the year, very much focused on different aspects of whether it is, the technical events where we speak about product side of things. So do stay plugged into the whole BrowserStack ecosystem, and we're very happy to have you here today and also in the future. Would just like to quickly thank Ganesh, Praveen, Anshu, Shardul, Jerry, and a whole host of people who work behind the scenes to make this thing happen. Too many to count over here. So we'd like to thank all of them. We'd like to thank all of you who have been here patiently, and we will be here for another 10 to 15 minutes. You have wrapped this questions down to 0. I think it is like a dream of all the product managers to have backlog equal to 0. So I think we're going to fulfill that dream for us and make sure that the backlog is 0 today for all the questions. So guys, thank you so much. Any parting comments from you, Jerry?
I guess, Mayuresh, first and foremost, thank you. This was beautiful. I think there was 2 parts to it, right? One is you hosting the people coming on the platform, talking about their journeys, their experiences. But I think it just made it so much better with the kind of engagement we had from the participants. I genuinely, I thank all of you. I think the panel and people at BrowserStack walk away richer, more aware, with a lot more insights. I think there is a lot that we've extracted from this group. We can add to our journey to make what we create better. So I think, Mayuresh, with that, thanks so much for joining in. My request, please stay safe, be well, and continue to reinvent yourselves, right? And hope to look forward to all of you joining this journey at some point of time. Mayuresh, I'm sorry, I couldn't stop but make that pitch. Thank you for giving me
so much. Guys, so quickly going back to the questions, in case you need to drop out because of your commitments at this point in time, feel free to do so. Surbi has posted a link over here. You may want to check that in the chat, and maybe I think there might be some sort of a follow-up. Thank you so much. Just quickly going back to the questions. So Shardul, Anshu, Ganesh, and also Praveen, if you're online, let's get this thing quickly answered. Is user persona research an ongoing activity? I think that's the question that we have over here. The short answer is absolutely yes, very much. And this happens jointly at multiple stages and specific to products in different pieces. But yes, it is something that happens all around the year, whether it is qualitative, quantitative studies which are commissioned to understand, test out new products, to test out new features. So absolutely, short answer is yes. Shardul, you want to take this one? Is the NPS collected through product or emails? Do you collect qualitative feedback to understand reasons for detractors?
Yeah, so again, I think we use Delighted as a tool. Again, depending on product experiences, we use in-product surveys as well as emails to collect the NPS feedbacks. And yes, we do collect the qualitative feedback from detractors as well as promoters, and then we use that information to sometime even get in touch with them to understand more. So yes, yeah, short answer.
Fantastic. And Shardul, since you're online, I think the question is, how does the technical life cycle of product look like? I mean, what happens behind the scene when user starts using the browser stack as a tool? Do you want to just quickly comment on the onboarding process that we have for maybe the app automate type products?
Yeah, so for a test automation product, usually these are the products when they the customer journey start with the integration first of all, and we have a sophisticated onboarding experience built up that allows customer to first start with the choosing of which kind of language or framework they're using, and based on that we make some sample scripts available. We also make sure we explain them the couple of aspect around across the concept around number of parallels, what kind of combination they can choose, and then most of the places we try to get them to do some quick value generating aspect where they can see the power of BrowserStack offering very, very quickly. Because for automate, it's like how quickly you can integrate and run the test, this Selenium test, right? That's a very important aspect. So that's what we get them to do first. Then the second, so once they actually experience that with some sample script, they see it end to end, they see the result on their dashboard. Then we get to the next stage where we try to say, okay, do you have some test cases that you want to start now importing, right? And that's where then we make sure some more documentation and touch points are available to them, where they can now start integrating their own test suits, right? Essentially. So in case of App Automate, there is an additional step get involved where they have to probably integrate in order to make sure the applications are uploaded to us so we can actually deploy those applications. So the more configuration come into the play. So yeah, it's a lot of technical integration that customer has to go through the step-by-step journey. It could be very extensive. One of the reason, and depending on the frameworks that customer has, there are multiple permutation combinations that come into the play. So yeah, that's probably the high level. Yeah.
Superb, fantastic. We have 7 questions. I'm just going to take one out of this. The reason being, I think the rest of them we have answered in some form factor or the other, and or the questions are way too speculative or slightly ill-posed. Not being judgmental over here, but just I think not sure how to pose them to any specific panelist or what kind of value can be derived. So Praveen, in case you're around, how are we powering the cloud service providers, and what is the nature of products you build for them? So we may not be building, but yeah, Praveen, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we don't build any products specifically for cloud service providers, right? So I think the point with that slide is that there are cloud service providers, leading cloud service providers, who use our platform to test their mobile websites or their websites and mobile apps, right? So that's the nature of how we power them. So we have them sort of test their software, release their software at speed with high quality with our platform.
Great, thank you so much, Praveen. I guess we have answered, I think, what are the core skills of product manager. I believe we touched upon this at some point in time today. With this, I think we've reached a logical conclusion where we believe we've answered a lot of the questions that we have raised over here. In case anyone has any questions at this point in time, feel free to post it on the Zoom chat. We'll be around for maybe another 3 minutes before we close. And yeah, feel free to ask any questions. We are around for 3 minutes more. Is there any question on the Zoom chat that we missed?
I think there were a couple of them when I was speaking. One was like, how many customers did you speak to? So I spoke to 50 in that context. And how do you decide number of customers to talk to for a given problem? I think this depends on the problem. There is no exact science of how many customers that you should speak to. We speak to at least like 10 to 15 for a given problem. That's just my personal opinion. I think different product managers might do it differently. And the other question was, what are some of the user research channels used on your site? So we have a customer success and sales team. So they engage with customers more often. So we piggyback on them to get on calls with customers and understand their use case. That is one major channel that has helped us. Apart from that, we have in-product surveys that give us inbound people who want to talk to us. So we speak to users like that. And the third one, in case if we are not able to get required information from these two, we do outbound, like we reach out to customers and talk to them. So these are the three major things.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I think the importance of NPS scores and also the qualitative feedback that we get from our NPS surveys, I think that's critical. I think as all PMs sort of look at that data and look at that analysis and feedback on a daily basis, and help us understand, sort of keep a pulse on what are the challenges with the product and how users are feeling. So.
Superb, guys. Another couple of minutes. We are online. Let us know. Yeah, another minute more. Thanks, Ravi Teja. Ganesh, do you think we should ask questions now?
No, I think we don't have any other questions. I think. But thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you all for joining us and staying with us all the way 20 minutes over the scheduled time. 140 minutes of fun. I think we had a lot of fun doing it. Hope you had fun receiving some of the value that was shared over here. Do reach out to us. I believe Surbhi has shared out the coordinates. So do reach out to us in case you have any queries, doubts. From all of us here at BrowserStack, Jerry, Praveen, Ganesh, Anshu, Shardul, thank you so much. And we will see you soon, very soon. And take care, stay safe, and bye. Have a good weekend.